Happy Monday to everybody out there watching us on YouTube Live. We really appreciate you taking some time out to get some more added context around what is now the beginning, week two, I should say, the beginning of week two of the trial of KOURI Richins, who is the Utah woman that is accused of killing her husband by giving him a lethal dose of fentanyl. And as we have every day during this trial, we are joined once again by Nathan Evershed. He is a defense attorney that is not associated with this case. Nathan, thanks a lot for taking some time with us. Happy Monday. How are things going? And I guess first and foremost, it was a big day in court. I know we're going to get into some of the context and the nitty-gritty, but what was your overall big takeaway today in court? Again, this is now, I guess, day 6 of the trial, but the first day of week number 2.
Huge day for the prosecution. If KOURI Richins is found guilty, we'd be pointing back to this day as to being a big reason why.
And why do you say that? Before we really get into dive into the details, help us understand and digest why you say that.
There's a huge word in trial, and that word is corroboration. And what they're trying to do is corroborate what other people have said. Today, we got an incredible amount of corroboration through cell phones, through cell phone records and what was found on cell phones and cell phone searches and whatnot. And it really paints a picture that is very valuable for the prosecutor.
This is a world that you probably live in all the time as you collect evidence, you go to trial, you work through the legal process. But for people that don't know how many digital breadcrumbs our phones can leave, kind of walk through for people exactly what can be left behind with our digital devices.
An incredible amount of information, a treasure trove, really. Um, Anytime I make a call, it hits a cell tower, and that cell tower gets registered in my phone records. Anytime I send a text communication, that gets registered through a cell tower, and it creates a log. And so, as I'm traveling with my cell phone, you can really track how I'm traveling through the cell tower records alone. But then, if someone were to access my phone and download it, it's just deleted files are located, photos are located, text messages are located, so as web searches are located. I mean, it's a treasure trove for the government to peer into something, and that's what they've done in this case.
And we'll hear from one of these witnesses today, but even when you unlock your screen on your phone, that is tracked. When it's put up to your face when you're talking and making a phone call, there are sensors in the phone that track that type of stuff. So it really gets down into some very finite detail about what these phones collect. And then, of course, when it's under a subpoena and when it's part of evidence in a legal case, what can be brought out. So I want to go ahead and start out with a former medical examiner who has since retired. There was about a 9-minute phone call that was played in court today between KOURI Richins and this retired medical examiner. It was played in court, and she asked about the 15 nanograms of fentanyl that was found in Eric's body. So this phone call took place after Eric had passed away, and she was asking if that was a lot. And the medical examiner was talking and questioning about, was there any abuse of fentanyl, to which she responded, no. That's why all of this is like, quote, what the heck? So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to play some sound from that phone conversation. Again, this is between KOURI Richins and a now retired medical examiner. So here is that.
So does this tell you, like, if it was like injected, if he ate it, is that what this, can you tell from this report?
Not definitively. I mean, it seems like, with what the amount that's there, that it probably was ingested. Probably taken by mouth.
Okay, and so the 15 ng, like, is that like a substantial amount? Is that like a trace?
That's a lot. That's a lot of fentanyl in the blood. Yeah, I mean, that's people die with half that amount or less in their system.
Okay, so that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so there's a little clip right there. Again, KOURI inquiring about the amount of fentanyl that was found in Eric's body from this former medical examiner. Any takeaways from that?
You can see why the prosecutor would want to present that. I mean, the jury might find that to be relevant and useful. One, you hear her voice. for whatever weight that might be. But then too, you hear her actually ask specific questions of fentanyl. You can definitely see how the defense would be using that hey, this is a grieving widow, someone that wants to know some more information about what happened and how this was ingested and how her husband died. So I found it to be interesting. I think the jury will give what weight it would be. It's something the prosecution has to present, they want to present, because maybe the jury finds that to be a little bit strange or weird or inculpatory. But interesting to see how that evidence would play out.
And then we really get into, I guess, what we would maybe call the star witness of the day. Now, this is an expert that looked into the data on the cell phones. There were multiple cell phones that he looked into, 3 different cell phones allegedly owned by KOURI Richins, 1 phone from Eric Richins, and then a phone from Robert Grozier and Carmen, the former housekeeper who we heard a lot from last week. So he was able to take these phones and through some technology kind of dissect and put a story together around the data collected from these phones. And so I want to go ahead and play some sound about the phone analysis that he started to talk to the court and talk to the jury about as he's prepping how he goes about getting some of this data and why it's so important. So let's go ahead and listen to that right now.
When you did the analysis for that white iPhone, was there evidence of deletions?
Yes.
Was there evidence of text message deletions?
Yes.
Evidence of call log deletions?
Yes.
Describe what time frame you were able to recognize those deletions happening.
The time frame essentially for that device is mid-March. So specifically as it relates to some of the other items I looked at related to this case, we're looking basically January 1st through middle of March 2022.
What was missing from that phone for January 2022, February 2022, and March 2022?
Hundreds of text messages at least. There were also missing most of the web history artifacts in that device.
Call histories as well?
Call logs, etc.
Okay, so they were talking about one of KOURI Richins' alleged phones right there, and we just heard from that witness saying, based on the data that I was able to look at, there was a lot of stuff that was deleted. What's the prosecution trying to do there?
There's something called the guilty mind that the prosecution is trying to present. Now, I think a key date as we talk right now and as we continue our conversation this evening is to remember that he died apparently March 3rd or March 4th. That March 4th is when the 911 phone call comes in. So when you're thinking about January and February, where apparently there was the obtaining of fentanyl during that time, which allegedly KOURI Richins arranged, that during that time that there were lots of text messages and all of them apparently, or lots of them or hundreds of them were actually deleted during that time frame leading up to March and even into March. So what the prosecution is trying to do here is indicate that she had something to hide and she was trying to cover her tracks.
And we're going to get into this word that you used a little bit earlier at the beginning of this, corroboration, and the next piece of sound that we're going to talk about. And then, of course, the searches we're going to talk about a little bit later. So as you mentioned, March 4th, or the very, very late hours of March 3rd into the early morning hours of March 4th is really the key date. And this expert says that he was able to track some of the movements of some of the players that were allegedly involved in this in the days leading up to that. So now I want to go ahead and play this right here. And this is map tracking is what this expert was talking about here. And what you're going to be looking at are, this is a chart or a graphic that this expert put together about the 2 people involved, Robert Crozier and Carmen Lauber, and their cell phone pings leading to a central location in Draper at a Maverick where that alleged drug deal took place. So let's go ahead and listen to that right now.
4:01 p.m. Call from the previous slide. Mr. Crozier is in Davis County. Ms. Lauber is in the Heber Valley area. To the right, those are the communications between the two. There's text and some phone calls. You can see the date stamps next to those. Essentially what this exhibit shows is the other side of that communication or that incident or event between Miss Lauber and Miss Crozier, or yeah, Mr. Crozier and Miss Lauber. Sorry. The two devices appear to travel in the same direction until they come to the same generalized location, utilizing those towers, and then return back to their respective starting points.
And that location that they're meeting up at, same as February 11th, 2022?
Yes, it's consistent with that, with the Draper area near that Maverick.
So we heard testimony from those two witnesses last week, and now we're seeing cell phone data, a visual representation of the two of them coming together. What do we take away from this?
It's just huge. Jim, that jury, most likely, they don't mingle with drug dealers, people that are going around to meet at a Maverick and exchange fentanyl and, oxycodone and whatnot. But that jury does know cell phones. Everybody knows cell phones. Everybody knows how these things work, and everybody can track that, and everyone can see that. So it's just powerful evidence. There's literally no doubt now whatsoever that Ms. Lauber and Mr. Crozier actually met up, and it really corroborates really the testimony of both of them. And so you get away from this really difficult witness that happened last week, as we might recall. There was a state's witness, Mr. Crozier, but now you get this corroborating evidence showing that indeed they did meet twice, at least, in February 2022, days even before Mr. Richins died.
And so if you're the prosecution, do you try to walk away from a day like today saying this jury has to think that there's corroboration now, that we heard the witnesses say that they met up and that drugs were exchanged, drugs were purchased, and now you're actually seeing it? I mean, they have to be feeling like today was a big win for them.
Oh, absolutely. There's no way, and I don't think anyone's really contesting this evidence, contesting that there was a drug deal between Crozier and Lauber. But even more importantly than that is all the text messages that were happening with Lauber and with Ms. Richins during the same time that all of this drug dealing is happening. And keep in mind, these are just days and weeks before Mr. Richins dies.
And I'm going to go in order of how they played this out in court. So we've got a couple other things to get to here. So the next one I thought was interesting. The prosecution put up some screen grabs, again, from this witness going through the data of one of KOURI's alleged phones. Shortly, now this is in the time after Eric had already passed away. And I'm going to go ahead and show you these images that they played in court today. And again, this was, according to this expert, taken from one of the phones of KOURI Richins. So what you're looking at on your screen right now are memes that this expert says were involved in some sort of text exchange. And as you can see, there's one that says idiots, idiots everywhere. There's one in the lower right-hand corner, I'm really rich. So let's go ahead and listen to this exchange from court earlier today.
I mean, it's a thumbnail. I mean, it's a PNG file. I mean, it's a thumbnail, yes.
From the data that you analyzed, were you able to tell if these images were accessed by Ms. Richins' phone?
They were accessed by the system in her phone, yes.
How do you know that?
It gives an accessed indication in the file path, in the data, and the extraction. It'll say when the device was accessed, and it will give a timestamp.
When we say accessed, what does that mean?
It just means when the file, or when that image was either selected or viewed, or, I mean, it's accessed. Yeah.
But it means it was selected or viewed by the person with that device.
Correct.
You mentioned there was a timestamp. When were these images accessed on KOURI Richins' phone?
8:29 a.m. on March 4th.
So 8:29 a.m. on March 4th, Eric Richins had already passed away. What's the prosecution doing here?
They're giving the strong signal to the jury that in the 3 o'clock hour of that morning, 911 was called, and she was aware that her husband died. And then only at 8:29, just mere hours later, there's an access to these PNG, these photo files that are there in her phone. Now, Jim, this kind of highlights something. It's obviously extraordinary for the prosecution to have such evidence. It's obviously so good for their theory, but it also kind of highlights what the defense has been able to do. And I was able to see the cross-examination on that, and they're 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 indicating that there are other images that were located, and maybe this was talking about something else, and maybe it was a text message that she just finally accessed that A29, and so because of all the deleted files, we don't know exactly where these images are attached to. So it's just a highlight. It looks so good for the prosecution, but also the evidence can also be portrayed by the defense to be almost meaningless to them because we don't have a context to it. We don't have a text message that this is tied to as well. But in a case, if I was prosecuting in a case, that would be a lovely thing to have, not just one of them, but all three of them that's accessed just hours later.
Yeah, and I mean, the prosecution is trying to paint their story of what they believe and what they are alleging happened. And so, I mean, is it common to sort of, I don't want to say necessarily cherry pick, but sort of selectively choose which evidence to show the jury? That's their job in trying to get a prosecution to tell their story, correct?
Absolutely. And they are going to present all of the evidence that they have to help demonstrate their own theory of the case. And when you look at memes like that, accessed just hours later, regardless through a phone, and when your theory is that this was all for money and insurance and all of this stuff, it's that can be really powerful for the jury to see, and it's quite helpful for the prosecutor. But it should be said on specifically that evidence, not all the evidence found on the phone. The defense did have some good arguments about it.
And so, as we got later in the day, there were these web searches that came out again from Corey's phone. So we're still hearing from this exact same witness who has been going through the data on this phone, and he starts to talk about web searches that he was able to determine Corey allegedly made on her device. And so let's go ahead, and I have some of that pulled up right here that I would like to go ahead and show. So I will go ahead and do that right now. Let's see here. There it is. Okay, here we go. And so what we're looking at right here, these are screen grabs from web searches, allegedly from Corey's phone. And you can see the top one. If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as? That was one of them right there. I'm going to go ahead and start playing this as they start to go through them now. Some of the other ones were, can deleted text messages be retrieved? Will life insurance pay if death certificate says pending? And these were some of the alleged searches that Kouri Richins made after Eric had passed. So what do we make of some of these web searches that were presented as evidence in court today?
So I would put it this way. I remember as a prosecutor, you'd scour through text messages, even recorded phone calls, all this, just looking for one thing. In this case, there is just an abundance of riches for the prosecutor. I mean, and it's easy to swap like swap one fly that's coming after you, but for the defense to have like a dozen, it's just so difficult because there's so many things on so many different topics. I wrote some down, looking how to delete files remotely, how to erase files remotely, what it's like to be in jail, what's how to pass a lie detector test or something, about that. More searches on fentanyl and on death. It just is. It's just an abundance of riches, a treasure trove of evidence indicating for the prosecution what they're trying to show is like she did this, she's looking at all this, and it really goes into her own personal state of mind as to what she's feeling, what she's thinking, what she's searching. I found those things to be so damaging to the defense and so good for the prosecution.
And so we talked about, since there technically is no murder weapon per se, and we talked about this being somewhat circumstantial. Is this just the culmination of all of this circumstantial evidence coming together to build that story?
Yeah, you're wondering. Well, the question for the jury is, why would this happen, or how would this happen, or what state of mind, or how would this lead someone to do this? And when you see searches like these, it kind of answers a lot of those questions, like who could do something like this? Well, someone that's looking to delete files and to erase memory and is worried about prison and is searching about fentanyl. I mean, it just, I'll put it this way, Jim. Juries just find these things so persuasive. We're not relying on the credibility of a housekeeper in this case. We're looking through what looks to be credible evidence that has now come in. No one's challenging the authenticity of it. They're only saying, well, who else had access to her phone, for example, which is not the best argument, but it's at least an argument. But it's so revealing of the state of mind, and that's what they're trying to determine, is what is her state of mind. And that stuff was just so damaging for Ms. Richins.
And then the day pretty much wrapped up with talking about questions surrounding, was this expert able to retrieve some of this deleted information off of KOURI's phone, alleged phone? And he was explaining not all of it, and it's difficult why. And he started to get into a little bit of the technical reasons why. And I want to go ahead, and this is our last piece of sound that we're going to play, and I'm going to go ahead and play that right now. Here's that piece right here.
Think of that deletion file as like the trash can in your house, like in your kitchen, okay? So you delete things, you throw things into that. Well, eventually it gets full, and you got to take it out to the curb, and the garbage man comes and gets it, and it's gone,
Right.
okay? So the more you use it, the more you have to take it out. So those databases store that information for a while, okay? Then what happens is that text information, the text threads, they're stored in a different place than these. What happens is every, 30-ish days, don't hold me to that, but it's roughly, this iOS system performs a vacuum. And what it does is it takes deleted information that's in there that it no longer thinks it needs for the system files, and it vacuums it out, and it basically takes it out to the curb, and then it goes away. So to answer your question, I did attempt to look for the source for this, but there is none of that data remains in the device or in the databases at all. All I have is these, what I referred to previously as orphaned images.
Or ghost.
Ghosts.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Is the prosecution here trying to portray to the jury that we tried to extract some of this deleted stuff and it's just gone, and why would anybody do that?
Correct. They're just trying to demonstrate to the jury there's all of the stuff that is deleted. We couldn't have retrieved it. We had an expert. He couldn't have retrieved it. This is what phones do. Once it's deleted, you just know it's deleted and you can't get access to it.
Anything that you saw based on cross-examination or anything else that you thought really stood out to you at trial today?
Just a couple of things apparently the first drug buy, 34 times there were text messages between Ms. Richins and Ms. Lauber, the housekeeper, during this drug deal that was happening. And then on the 26th of February, 71 messages between both of them. Really extraordinary corroboration that Ms. Richins was trying to get Ms. Lauber to obtain these controlled substances, i.e. fentanyl. There was also another witness earlier in the day that said in 2019, Ms. Richins was worried about the prenuptial agreement and, not having money if they got divorced, and some concerns that way, laying out more motive and whatnot. So an incredible day for the prosecution. I thought this evidence, in my experience, especially with drug deals and icky stuff and witnesses that you don't know how to make heads or tails, something like this is so powerful for the prosecutor.
Yeah, so you're saying they had a pretty good day, the prosecution
Yes.
today, in terms of laying out their case and continuing to tell their story, corroboration to the jury.
Correct.
Okay, well, Nathan Evershed, thank you again, as always, for taking some time to help break down this trial for us and to add some extra context. We really do appreciate it. And for everyone else out there, if you'd like to go ahead and subscribe to our KUTV YouTube page, you can follow along as well. We will be here, myself and Nathan, every single day of the trial. He will be helping us break down and understand some of these complex legal issues and tactics and strategies the entirety of the trial. So, Nathan, once again, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.